Harper Owens never planned to crash her cousin's 10-year college reunion until her car broke down 3 blocks from the venue and she stumbled into the bar, soaked from the rain, just trying to use a phone. Harper, her cousin, Madison, blinked from across the room, wine glass in hand. "What the hell are you doing here?" "I swear I'm not stalking you," Harper said, brushing wet hair from her face. "My car died. I just need to call a tow truck, but my phone's dead. And you said this was some fancy rooftop place, not whatever this is." Madison burst out laughing. "It's still the rooftop. They just moved the party downstairs because of the storm. Come in, you look like a drowned cat." Before Harper could retreat, Madison grabbed her wrist. The room was buzzing with people in suits and dresses, laughing like they hadn't aged a day. Harper felt like a high schooler who wandered into a boardroom. "I'm not dressed for this," she said, glancing down at her soaked jeans and hoodie. "You're fine," Madison insisted. "You're gorgeous. And honestly, half these people hated me in college. You being here just made this 1,000 times more fun." Before Harper could argue, Madison spun her toward the bar. "Come meet Sebastian and Vaughn. They're college friends and insanely loaded now. Try not to faint." "Great," Harper muttered. "Exactly the people I want to meet when I look like I've been hit by a hurricane." But then she saw him, the man leaning against the bar, whiskey in hand, wearing a tailored black suit that looked like it cost more than her rent. Dark hair, sharp jawline, eyes that flicked toward her and didn't look away. He didn't smile. Just looked at her like she'd walked in from another world. "That's Vaughn," Madison whispered. Harper blinked. Vaughn Teller, tech investor. Bought a cybersecurity firm last year for like 20 million. Harper's stomach flipped. "Cool. I'll just die now." But before she could escape, Vaughn walked toward her. "You're not from the reunion," he said, voice deep, curious, not judgmental. "I'm not," Harper said, heat rising to her cheeks. "I'm the tragic cousin who crashed it by accident." "Tragic?" His eyes moved to her soaked clothes. "You look like you escaped something." "I escaped a Honda Civic with a broken radiator," she said, shrugging. "And the rain. So yeah, I guess I did." For a second, he just looked at her. Then he handed her his whiskey. "Here. You need this more than I do." Harper blinked. "You're giving your drink to a total stranger?" "You don't feel like a stranger," he said. And just like that, it started. They talked. She dried off. Madison disappeared into a circle of old classmates, and Harper stayed near the bar, somehow still talking to Vaughn. He was not what she expected. He asked about her job, freelance photographer, mostly weddings and portraits. He didn't flinch when she mentioned barely scraping by. He even asked to see her work. 2 hours passed like 5 minutes. "You have a good eye," he said, flipping through her photos on her camera. "You see people. That's the goal," she said. "Cameras don't lie." "Neither do you," he said, looking at her again. "That's rare." She laughed. "What honesty?" "No. People who don't pretend. Especially in rooms like this." She didn't know what to say to that. So she said, "You don't seem like everyone else here." "I'm not." That was it. No explanation. Just certainty. Harper's phone finally turned on, but she didn't call the tow truck right away. Vaughn offered to drive her home. She hesitated. "I don't accept rides from strangers." "Then don't think of me as a stranger," he said. "Think of me as your cousin's friend, who also happens to have a warm, dry car." She got in the car. And it wasn't just warm and dry. It was a black luxury SUV with leather seats and an actual screen in the back seat. The kind of car you saw in movies. "You live like this?" she asked, glancing around. "I live alone. The car makes it feel less empty." She didn't know how to respond to that. He dropped her off outside her apartment, and before she got out, he said, "I'm throwing a dinner next Saturday. Small. Just a few people. Come." She blinked. "You want me?" "Yes." She hesitated. "I don't have anything to wear to some millionaire dinner." "I'll handle that," he said. "Just say yes." She stared at him. Yes. He smiled, finally. And it wasn't a polite boardroom smile. It was real. Like he hadn't smiled like that in a while. The next morning, Harper woke up to a package at her door. Inside, a deep navy designer dress, a pair of silver heels, and a handwritten note. Saturday at 7. I'll pick you up. She stared at the note for a long time. This wasn't her life. She took bus rides and photographed toddlers for a living. She didn't wear $1,000 dresses and go to rich people's dinners with men who looked like that. But she couldn't stop smiling. Saturday came fast. Vaughn arrived at her building in a different luxury car, this time sleek, silver, and somehow even more expensive than the last. When she stepped outside in the dress he sent, his eyes lit up. You look, he paused, visibly stunned. Incredible. She tried not to blush. You don't look so bad yourself. Dinner was at a rooftop restaurant overlooking the city skyline. Private, candlelit, the kind of place where the waiter didn't bring menus, they just asked about your preferences and brought you something perfect. Harper had never experienced anything like it. And Vaughn? He didn't brag. He didn't name drop. He talked about life, about travel, about the way he used to be afraid of failing even when he already had millions. He asked her questions. Real ones. You think this is insane? He asked quietly as they looked out over the city. She turned to him. Honestly? Yeah, but in the best way. He laughed. Good. I was hoping you'd say that. By the end of dinner, she wasn't thinking about how different their worlds were. She was thinking about how he looked at her like she mattered. As they stood waiting for the valet, he gently took her hand. I don't usually do this, he said. Do what? Talk like this. Ask for second dates. But I want to see you again. Her heart raced. Okay. He stepped closer. I keep thinking about that night at the bar. You standing there soaking wet, not caring what anyone thought. That moment changed something. She looked up at him. Me too. He leaned down, careful, and kissed her. It was soft, gentle, like he wasn't just kissing her, he was asking for something. And the second their lips touched, she knew. This wasn't just a crush. This was the beginning of something neither of them saw coming. You're not going to tell me what you do, are you? Harper tilted her head as the elevator in Vaughn's sleek high-rise apartment glided silently upward. The walls were glass, revealing a glittering view of the city below, but she barely noticed it. Her focus was entirely on him, stoic, unreadable, and standing just close enough that she could feel the heat radiating from his body. I already told you, he said, eyes fixed ahead. Investments. Boring stuff. Right? She said dryly. Because most investment guys host dinner on rooftops with waiters who sound like they've trained in Paris. He glanced at her then, a flicker of amusement in his eyes. You don't like being kept in the dark? I don't like being danced around. The elevator opened directly into his penthouse. One wall was entirely glass, revealing the skyline. The space stretched wide and open, decorated in deep neutrals with bold, modern art. A grand piano stood near the windows, untouched. There was no clutter, just intentional, curated elegance. I wasn't dancing, he said as he walked in. I was editing. Why? He turned. Because when people find out exactly what I do, they start seeing dollar signs. Not me. She stepped deeper into the space, her heels clicking against the polished floor. And you think I'm different? I think you haven't asked me what I'm worth, he said. That's rare. She stopped walking. That's because I don't care. That answer seemed to hit him. He didn't say anything for a beat. Then he walked to the kitchen, opened a chilled cabinet, and pulled out a bottle of wine that looked older than both of them. I'm not used to this, he said, pouring 2 glasses. What? Women who don't want your net worth. He handed her a glass. Women who don't flinch when I don't perform. She sat on the leather couch, tracing the rim of the glass. You think this is performing? I think I've spent years building walls. You walked in, soaking wet, and didn't even notice them. She took a sip. I noticed. I just didn't care. He leaned against the counter, watching her. Tell me something real. Something you don't tell anyone. She tilted her head. You first. His jaw tensed. Then he said I used to stutter. Badly. Couldn't get through a sentence without choking on it. I didn't talk for most of 3rd grade. She blinked. What changed? My father. He looked past her, out the window. Told me if I ever wanted to be taken seriously, I'd have to learn to control it. So I stopped speaking unless I could say it perfectly. There was something brittle in his voice. Harper didn't press. My turn, she asked gently. He nodded. I used to draw, she said. Before photography. Sketchbooks full of people's faces. I stopped after my mom died. Couldn't make sense of what I saw anymore. His gaze sharpened. You still have them? She shook her head. I burned them. He pushed off the counter. Came closer. Why? It felt like the only thing I could control, she said. Losing her broke something, and the drawings reminded me of what I couldn't fix. He sat beside her, close but not touching. You hide that well. I've had practice. Their eyes met. Then his phone rang. He ignored it. Do you always do that? She asked. What? Let the world wait for you. I don't care about the world, he said. Right now, I care about you. It would have been a line from anyone else, but something in the stillness of his voice made her chest tighten. I should go, she said, standing a little too quickly. He rose with her. Did I scare you? She looked at him. You make it hard to breathe. That's different. He stepped closer. Then don't breathe. He kissed her again, this time deeper, slower. Her hands found his collar, his fingers slid against her waist, anchoring her like the moment might tear them both apart. When they finally pulled away, his forehead rested against hers. Come to the gala with me Friday, he said quietly. She blinked. Gala? Fundraiser. Formal. Black tie. You'll hate most people there, but I won't let them touch you. Is this a test? She asked. His fingers grazed her jaw. No. It's a night I want to survive. And I'd rather do that with you. She nodded before she could think. Okay. The next morning, a black envelope arrived at her door. Inside, an invitation on thick paper embossed in gold and a small card that read, Your dress is being handled. Don't worry. Harper stared at it. Every instinct told her this was spiraling into something too big, too fast. But when Friday night came, there it was. A box at her doorstep, inside of which was a floor-length midnight blue gown. The fabric shimmered when she moved, delicate straps crossing her back, the cut elegant in a way that made her look like someone else. Except she wasn't someone else. And when Vaughn picked her up, dressed in a black tux that molded to him like it had been stitched onto his frame, he didn't look at her like she was pretending. He looked at her like he'd been waiting for her to become exactly who she was. The gala was held at an estate outside the city. Crystal chandeliers, marble floors, champagne in slender flutes. It was the kind of place Harper used to photograph from the outside, never step into. People turned when they entered. Not because of Vaughn, he was used to that, but because of her. Because she didn't belong. And yet somehow, she commanded the room without trying. Why are they staring? She whispered as they descended the grand staircase. Because you're the only real thing in a room full of mannequins, he said. She didn't respond, but she tightened her grip on his arm. They mingled. People tried to engage her, but Vaughn didn't leave her side. His hand never left the small of her back. He introduced her as Harper, nothing more. Not a tag, not a label, just her name. And when an older man in a navy suit leaned in close and said, She's not your usual type, Vaughn. With a knowing look, Vaughn didn't flinch. He looked the man dead in the eye and said, She's not a type. She's mine. Later that night, on the balcony overlooking the gardens, Harper turned to him. Are you always like this? Like what? Intense. Impossible. Honest to a fault. Only with you, he said. She looked away, heart hammering. You don't know me. I know enough. That's dangerous. I like danger. He stepped closer. And when he kissed her again, with the moonlight catching the curve of her cheek and his hand pressing gently against her spine, she realized something terrifying. She was starting to fall, and she had no idea how to stop. Harper didn't hear from Vaughn for 2 days after the gala. Not a call, not a visit, nothing. She tried to ignore the knot in her stomach. Maybe he was busy. Maybe he was traveling. Maybe she imagined all of it, the way he'd held her hand as they left the ballroom, the way his jaw clenched when someone looked at her too long, the way he kissed her like he was afraid he wouldn't get another chance. She didn't want to care, but she did. By the 3rd day, she buried herself in editing photos from a wedding shoot so she wouldn't text him first. She wouldn't be that kind of girl. The one who clings. The one who waits. But that night, there was a knock at her door. She opened it and froze. Vaughn stood there, hair damp from the wind, a black coat over his shoulders, and a look in his eyes that made her heart thud once, hard. "I should have called," he said. She crossed her arms. "You think? I had to leave town for a meeting, last minute. I didn't want to make it worse by texting some half-excuse. You could have said that 3 days ago." "I know." He looked tired. Not physically, he still looked irritatingly flawless, but like something had worn him down. "Why are you really here?" she asked. He reached into his coat and pulled out a small, flat box. "I was in Chicago. I passed a gallery. There was a photographer exhibiting portraits. These reminded me of you." She opened the box. Inside were 3 vintage photo prints, raw, black and white street portraits. Faces caught mid-laugh, mid-thought, mid-heartbreak. The kind of images that made you stop breathing. She swallowed. "These are incredible. They felt like your work. Honest, unpolished, real." She looked up. "You remembered what I liked. I remember everything you tell me." She stepped aside and let him in. He took in her apartment books stacked carelessly on the floor, a cracked mug holding pencils, a wall of pinned photos in progress. He didn't comment, just ran his fingers along the edge of her desk and said, "This feels like you." She sat down on the couch. "Why do I feel like you're about to tell me something I won't like?" He turned. "Because I am." She waited. "My company is merging with one of our competitors. It's been in the works for months, but it got finalized this week. That's good, right?" "It depends." "On what?" "On whether you're okay being dragged into it." She blinked. "Dragged into what?" "There's going to be press. Events. Eyes. People will ask questions about who I'm with. They'll dig." He paused, jaw tight. "I don't want them touching your life." She stood. "Are you warning me or trying to push me away?" "I don't know yet. Vaughn, I've never dated someone who wasn't already part of the scene. Who knew how to play the game. You don't play. And that's what his voice dropped. "That's what I love about you." Her breath caught. "What did you just say?" "I said I love that you don't play the game." "No. Before that." He didn't look away. "I love you." The words hit her like a wave to the chest. She stepped back, heart pounding. "You can't say that like it's nothing. I'm not. We've known each other for what, 2 weeks? You don't love me, Vaughn. You don't even know me." He moved to her, slow and deliberate. "You're wrong. I know exactly who you are. You don't hide behind anything. You feel everything and still keep going. You don't need anyone to fix you, but you let me see the cracks anyway." She shook her head. "That's not love. That's infatuation." "No," he said, voice steady. "Infatuation fades. This doesn't." She stared at him, emotions warring inside her. "I need time," she whispered. "I'll give you that. But I'm not going anywhere." He left without asking for anything more. The next morning, Harper got a call from a blocked number. "Miss Owens," a woman with a clipped British accent said. "Mr. Teller has requested your presence at tonight's launch party. A car will be sent at 6. I didn't agree to go. I understand. But he asked me to inform you that your photos will be featured in the exhibit." Harper froze. "What?" He submitted them anonymously to the foundation's curation team. They were accepted. He wanted it to be a surprise. I didn't submit anything. Apparently, Mr. Teller did. He thought your work deserved the stage. She hung up and stared at the wall. He hadn't told her. He hadn't asked for permission. But he'd believed in her enough to put her work in front of the world. She didn't know whether to scream or cry. At 6, the car came. She wore the only formal dress she owned that wasn't from Vaughn, and even then, it felt like wearing someone else's skin. The exhibit was held in an industrial space turned gallery, walls washed in white, music soft and ambient. She stepped inside and froze. Her photos lined the left wall. Large format prints. Her name printed beneath each one. People were gathered around them, discussing lighting, expression, composition. She watched, stunned, as a couple pointed to one of her portraits, a woman laughing with her eyes closed, and nodded in admiration. Then he appeared. Vaughn stepped through the crowd in a charcoal suit. No tie, shirt unbuttoned just enough to be dangerous. His eyes locked on hers like a tether snapping tight. "You came," he said. "You put my work up without asking." "I did. I should be furious." "You should." "I'm not." "I know." She stared at him. "Why?" "Because you needed someone to push you. And I needed to prove I wasn't just saying words." She looked toward her photos. "They're actually talking about them. Like they mean something." "They do." She turned back to him. "You really believe that?" "I do." She hesitated. "I'm scared." "Of what?" "That you'll wake up one day and realize this was all too fast. That you'll want someone who fits into your world without having to bend it." He stepped closer. "I don't want someone who fits. I want someone who makes me rebuild the whole damn thing." The air between them crackled with something unspoken, electric and consuming. "I don't know how to do this," she whispered. "I do," he said. "Let me show you." She looked up at him, and for the first time in her life, she let herself believe she might actually deserve something good. Then, without hesitation, she reached for his hand. And this time she held on. "I want to take you somewhere," Vaughn said as they stepped out of the gallery into the cool night. "Someplace that doesn't care who I am. Or who you think you're supposed to be." Harper hesitated. "Is this another one of your moonlit surprises?" "No. This one's mine. No stylists, no invitations, no drivers." He looked at her. "Just us." She agreed, though her heart was already racing from the whirlwind of the night. Her photographs were still hanging behind them, her name printed in bold, undeniable text. She hadn't processed any of it, but she followed Vaughn to a black motorcycle parked at the curb, helmets already clipped to the back. "You're kidding," she said, eyeing the bike. "You trust me?" he asked, holding out a helmet. She took it. "Don't make me regret that." They rode for nearly an hour out of the city and into the hills where the skyline fell behind them. The wind tangled her hair, and every curve of the road peeled away her doubt. When they finally stopped, it was at a quiet overlook, the city glowing far below like a distant constellation. Vaughn turned off the engine, kicked the stand, and pulled off his helmet, his hair windswept and eyes burning through the dark. "This is where I come when everything's too loud." Harper took her helmet off slowly. "It's quiet here." "That's the point." They sat on a flat patch of rock, knees brushing, the wind soft around them. For a moment, neither of them spoke. "Do you remember the first time you realized you were alone?" Harper asked suddenly. He didn't flinch at the question. 9 years old. "My father forgot to pick me up from school. I waited on the steps until the janitor locked the gates." She nodded. "I was 11. I missed a math test because I was too busy making dinner. My mom didn't come home that night. I realized no one had noticed I wasn't at school. Not even the teacher." Vaughn looked over at her, his voice quieter now. "You don't talk about her much. She was complicated. Beautiful but fragile. She wanted to be a painter. Ended up waiting tables instead. She told me once that dreams are like soap bubbles too pretty to last." "She was wrong," he said. Harper met his gaze. "You're chasing yours," he continued. "And now the world's starting to see what I already knew." She swallowed hard. "I'm terrified this is a dream too. That I'll wake up back in my apartment, broke, alone, and trying to convince myself that one perfect night doesn't mean anything." It means everything, he said. Vaughn reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a small, polished wooden box. Her breath caught. I wasn't going to do this yet, he said. But I realized something tonight. Waiting for the perfect moment is just another way of hiding. He opened the box. Inside was a thin platinum band, delicate, with a single opal at the center, surrounded by a halo of tiny diamonds. Not flashy. Not loud. Just quietly luminous. Harper stared at it, stunned. I'm not asking you to move into a penthouse or join some headline romance, Vaughn said. I'm asking you to be mine. Not because it looks good. Not because it makes sense. But because when you walked into that reunion, soaking wet and glaring at the bartender, I stopped breathing. And I haven't started again since. She blinked fast, her throat tight. This is insane. It is, he agreed. But I've built companies, conquered boardrooms, survived million-dollar losses. And none of that scared me like the thought of losing you. Her voice broke. I don't know how to be someone's forever. You don't have to know, he said. Just stay. We'll figure out the rest. She looked down at the ring. Then at him. The man who'd seen past her defenses. Who'd never asked her to change, only to let him in. She reached for the box and closed it gently. Not yet, she said softly. Vaughn didn't flinch, didn't pull away. Okay. But not because I don't want to, she added. Because if I say yes now, I want it to be with both feet planted. I want to walk toward it, not fall into it. He nodded once. Then I'll wait. They sat together until the stars shifted overhead and the air grew cold. He wrapped his coat around her shoulders without a word, and she leaned into him, her head on his chest, listening to the steady rhythm of a heart that had once belonged to no one. Weeks passed. Harper's photos were picked up by a major creative magazine. She started getting calls for commercial work, real clients, real budgets. Her name was printed on things she hadn't dared imagine before. Vaughn never stopped showing up. He never asked again, never rushed. Instead, he showed her what love looked like in the quiet, bringing her cameras to her studio when she forgot them, leaving coffee outside her door on early mornings, sitting through 3-hour editing sessions just to be near her. And then one afternoon, she found herself standing in the middle of a boutique gallery downtown, staring at a wall painted deep gray, her new series titled Unfiltered, displayed in clean black frames. A small card beside the entrance read, curated by Harper Owens. A soft voice behind her said, told you the world would see it. She turned. Vaughn stood there in jeans and a button-down, no suit, no guards. Just him. Do you still have the ring? She asked. His brow lifted slightly, but he reached into his pocket and pulled it out without a word. She walked over and took it from his hand. Then, slowly, she slid it onto her finger. I'm not walking in with one foot, she said. I'm running. He didn't speak. He just pulled her close and kissed her, not with desperation, but with promise. The kind that echoed through her bones, steady and sure. The gallery lights glowed above them. Her work surrounded them, and in that moment Harper knew she hadn't crashed anything. She'd simply walked into the room fate had been saving for her all along. And Vaughn Teller, the man with the impossible eyes and the guarded heart, had been waiting right there in the center of it. Ready, willing, hers. Harper stood at the edge of the rooftop garden, her camera hanging at her hip, watching the last of the guests slip through the arched stone exit draped in fairy lights. The soft hum of jazz floated from the speakers, winding through the night air mingled with the faint scent of roses that lined the garden's edge. The exhibition had been a success. More than that, it had been a turning point. Her photos weren't just admired tonight, they were purchased. Every single one. She turned when she felt him behind her. Vaughn didn't speak. He reached for her hand and laced their fingers together. I saw the red dots, he said, glancing toward the wall of her work inside the gallery. I didn't think they'd sell out, she admitted. I kept waiting for someone to tell me it was a mistake. They didn't, he said. Because it wasn't. She tilted her head. How do you always sound so certain? I'm not, he said. But I'm certain about you. They stood in silence, the city below them alive and glittering. She leaned into him, the weight of the evening finally sinking in. "I got an offer," she said after a while. He looked down at her. "What kind of offer?" "A gallery in Paris wants to feature me this fall. They emailed me after the story ran in the magazine. They called it emotionally disarming." She gave a breathless laugh. "I had to Google what that even meant. And? I told them I needed to think about it." Vaughn studied her. "Because of me?" "Because of us," she said. "Because I finally have something that feels like home and I'm scared to leave it." He didn't answer right away. Then he said, "You should go." She blinked. "What?" "You should go to Paris. Show them who you are." "I'll come with you." Her heart stopped. "You'd come," she said, barely above a whisper. "I made a promise," he said, "to build a life around you, not just invite you into mine." Tears welled in her eyes. She hadn't cried once tonight, too stunned, too overwhelmed. But now, with him saying the one thing she hadn't dared to ask for, the dam broke. "I don't need Paris to prove anything," she said, her voice shaking. "I just need to know that you'll still be here when I land." "I'll be at the gate," he said. "Every time." She laughed through her tears. "You don't even like to fly." "I'll get over it." She pulled him into a kiss. The kind that didn't need urgency or rescue or apology. Just quiet certainty. Just love. Months passed. Paris was everything Harper feared and everything she needed. Vaughn rented a penthouse tucked between Montmartre and the Seine and insisted they walk everywhere, even when it rained. He bought her an antique camera from a market and she photographed strangers in cafes, lovers on bridges, shadows in alleyways that whispered of stories not yet told. He worked from wherever she was. Took calls in the kitchen while she edited photos on the floor. He cooked more. Badly. But he always tried. And every time she walked into a room where he was, he looked up like he couldn't believe she was real. They made a life. Not perfect. Not polished. But deeply, unapologetically theirs. On a quiet morning in September, Harper woke to the sound of jazz drifting from the record player. She padded into the living room, barefoot, and found Vaughn standing at the window, coffee in hand, the city bathed in gold behind him. She walked over and slid her arms around his waist. "I have something for you," he said. "Another surprise? This one's overdue." He turned and handed her a small envelope. Inside was a plane ticket. She frowned. "New York. Just for a weekend," he said. "You have a gallery opening." She blinked. "I didn't book anything in New York." "You didn't," he said. "I did. The foundation that hosted your first show wants to bring your Paris collection stateside. They're opening a new branch in Soho. They asked me to curate the space." She looked up at him. "You're serious?" "I wanted to wait until I knew you wouldn't say no." She threw her arms around his neck and kissed him, laughing against his mouth. "I should be mad," she said. "You're always doing things behind my back. You love it." "I do," she admitted. Later that night, they walked along the Seine, her hand in his, the Eiffel Tower glowing in the distance. Buskers played soft melodies on the steps, and the world felt impossibly quiet. "I've been thinking," she said softly. He glanced over. "If we ever stop chasing the next thing, I don't want to lose this. The way you look at me when you think I'm not watching. The way you believe in things before they happen. I want that. Forever." Vaughn stopped walking. He pulled something from his coat pocket, something worn and familiar. "The ring." "You kept it?" she whispered. "I never took it back." She didn't hesitate this time. She held out her hand. And under a sky strung with stars, in a city built on stories and second chances, he slid the ring onto her finger. They didn't need an audience or a rooftop or a gala. They just needed each other. Years later, their photographs hung side by side in galleries across the world. His architectural abstracts, her portraits of real people in real light. But the pictures that mattered most never made the walls. They lived in quiet moments. A kiss beside the stove. A letter slipped into a suitcase before a trip. A photograph taken on a rainy afternoon in their Paris kitchen, Harper in Vaughn's old sweater, barefoot, laughing at something he'd said, while he stood just out of frame, watching her like she was the answer to every question he'd ever asked. And she was. Because in the end, love wasn't built in grand gestures. It was found in the spaces between them, and neither of them ever let go.